Let's go.
What a lovely day!
Andy, there's a whole world out there. Jump in.
Can you dig it?
Yeah.
You must always pay strict attention.
I was just completely enamored by it the entire time.
Dude, he did not have to go that hard.
I know, man. Isn't it wild?
The Jared Cast.
So it begins.
Hey, cinema! What's up? Welcome to the Jared Cast. Welcome to the Jared Cast. We have a title now. Yay! Look at us go. With me, as always, is the beautiful Jared Ankanan. Give it up for him. Lots of clapping, lots of clapping. And with us today, special guest. What is this, a crossover episode?
Yeah.
We got the one and only Renato Paniagua.
There you go.
Hell
you
yeah.
got it.
More claps,
you got
more
it,
claps.
dude.
Yeah?
You
Did
got
I nail it?
You got it.
I need friends with some more easy last names for my white ass to pronounce. But we're here. We're talking about 3 fantastic movies. That's just an assumption. Maybe these boys hated it. But I'm excited. How you guys doing?
Doing really good. You know, I'm very thankful you guys brought me on the show because now I'm able not only to talk about another thing I love, but I'm able to talk about it with a couple smart fellas. And, you know, they're both named Jared, so this should be fun.
Do you feel intimidated by our names?
Yeah, I'm there's 2 Jareds and 1 Renato, so, like, I'm outnumbered here.
Yeah.
All right. My dad is not good at, like, really talking on the podcast, so, like, I can't bring him in as a tag team group, right? So I'm going to have to do this.
I do like that on the Zoom, we're on either side of you for me. And so it's kind of, you're in a little Jared sandwich.
I mean,
but how are you doing, Jared?
I'm doing great.
Or you?
I'm excited to talk about these movies, and I had a lot of fun putting together the first episode. Had a lot of fun putting together that intro. So
Yeah.
Nice.
I hope y'all liked it.
yeah. Have you heard it, Renato, or did he send
Yeah.
it to you?
No,
I
I
haven't,
didn't get anything.
I'll send you a copy.
Renato's just a fan to me. So. He has to wait till it gets released.
Yeah, fair enough. I'm on the other end of the stick this time.
Yeah.
I just realized we should talk
Exactly.
about release dates because we haven't yet.
Yeah. Oops, behind the scenes.
Yeah,
Anyway.
just really quick, like, you know what really bothers me about, like, when I do the Zoom calls, like, I legit have nothing open in my room, and, like, on my
You are
screen,
white as a
I am like,
fucking
it happens every morning, like every single time we record, it's like, oh man,
Yeah.
I am like white as fuck.
I know. And every once in a while it'll dip to pink. It's beautiful.
Nice.
Yeah, but we're not here to talk about Renato's pasty flesh.
Yeah,
we're here to
no.
talk about movies. We got 3 good ones. Today's theme is good movies by bad directors. So sorry to these 3 directors. Not the best track record, but you guys did good with at least one of them. Today we'll talk about Event Horizon, The Mummy, and Con Air. I had actually never seen Con Air. That is a new one for me,
Hell
this
yeah.
one. So I'm definitely excited to get into that. But to start things off, we're gonna talk about Event Horizon first. Paul W.S. Anderson took the name of 2 good directors and kind of stole it for himself. Came out in 1997. You may know him from the Resident Evil films, Mortal Kombat, Alien vs. Predator, Pompeii, Death Race, and a bunch of other shitty movies. Alien vs. Predator is pretty good. I'll give him that.
Yeah.
Background on this film, he made Mortal Kombat, and it was a huge commercial success. And they're like, hey, man, do you want to direct like an X-Men movie? And he's like, nope, I want to make Event Horizon. And it kind of bombed in the box office, but it gained cult classic status. Plot of the film: when the Event Horizon, a spacecraft that vanished years earlier, also the biggest space disaster in the universe of this film, suddenly reappears, a dispatched team is going to go investigate and try to see if there's anybody left on board, figure out what happened. accompanied by the Event Horizon's creator, William Ware, played by Sam Neill, the crew of the Lewis and Clark, which is led by Captain Miller, played by Lawrence Fishburne. Blah. Begins to explore the seemingly abandoned vessel. However, it soon becomes evident that something spooky's going on, and that the horrors of what happened are still present. It's also got Kathleen Keeneland, I don't know, Julie Richardson, Richard T. Jones, Jack Noseworthy, which is a fantastic last name, Jason Isaac, Sean Pertwee, and Peter Marinker. Thoughts? Do you guys enjoy it?
I enjoyed it.
I
both times,
also
yeah.
I,
Go
I,
ahead.
I also liked the guy's name, Noseworthy.
Noseworthy?
I think it's
no.
Kathleen Quinlan.
Yeah, it's Quinlan.
Yeah.
Quinlan?
Yeah.
Oops.
See, there you go. I'll let
It's my brand to mispronounce names, so it's fine.
I'll let Jared A go and give his thoughts first.
Yeah. This is
Yeah.
my second watch
What'd
of
you think?
Event Horizon, and I enjoyed it. Probably not as much as the first time because I had I saw the Rotten Tomatoes thing, and I saw that
The whopping 26.
and I knew I knew ahead of time
Impressive.
that audiences like didn't watch it at first and then like slowly grew to like it. And so I was like, okay, I'll check it out. You know, I like Lawrence Fishburne. And then I was like, oh my God, that was amazing. And then the second time I still thought it was like a really, really, really great and imaginative film. But I also noticed things that that bugged me the first time, but like bugged me a little more this time. So we can get into those later. But I still love the movie overall. I think all the performances are great, and the production design and makeup is stellar.
Yeah. If you had to give it a little rating from -10 to 10, where you placing this bad boy?
I think I'm putting it at I'm leaning towards a solid 7.
Cool.
I liked it a lot. If you had asked me like the first time I watched it, I would have given it like an 8 because I was not expecting it to be that good. But here, I generally really, really love the movie, and I think it's an above average horror film for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. What about you, Nato? What are you feeling on this bad mamma jamma?
Yeah, no, it was definitely a trip that this one I hadn't watched at all before. So like I obviously, us film people, we know exactly what Event Horizon is. I just never got around to watching it until you bestowed that honor upon me.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you. And I also really, really enjoyed it. I mentioned this prior to you when we were speaking about it, like a little bit. The only thing I will say kind of feels off about it is like, it feels like sometimes bits and pieces are missing. Not to say that they're plot holes, but it feels like things move a little too fast, and it's almost like, oh shit, we're already we're already like
It's a bit of a
there.
breakneck pace.
Right, and you know, and admittedly, maybe it works in that way because this film is very like Lovecraftian in that cosmic horror sort of sense, where it's just like, it's not really what you see, it's what you don't, and it's like that kind of paranoia that sinks in, and you definitely like feel it. I'm not gonna lie to you, I really love I forgot his name already, I'm sorry, but the actor who plays Cooper, and I really love Jason Isaacs' character. Such a like brooding kind of like quiet medical guy who all of a sudden like near the end he's like pulling out knives on people and is like you know, like some pretty really good performances. Also Sam Neill, I don't think he's ever disappointed me, even when he was in Peaky Blinders, having to rock that Scottish accent. But no, dude, I thought first and foremost, the one thing that I think stood out to me the most was just like the makeup and the like practicals, because there's some stellar practicals that really hold up still. Obviously, like for the CG, some of it is outdated, but for the most part, I really love that opening shot of like the upside down tilt, and like it's like this big old ship that looks like a lighting setup for the WWE. It was
Yep, yep.
it was pretty cool, and so yeah, but we can go into further detail a bit later. But if I had to give it a score -10 out of 10, I would also have to agree with my boy Jared and give it a 7. It was definitely most enjoyable. Though at some parts I was kind of like, oh crap, I don't like this moved kind of fast, and but I think overall it worked pretty well.
Yeah. This is kind of interesting because you both went with a 7. My score was a bit lower, and I was the one who picked it. So I feel like that's a bit weird. I gave it let me get the exact decimal, a 5.9.
Interesting.
Which is not to say that I don't thoroughly enjoy this film. It's a very fun movie, which will be definitely a through line throughout these 3. None of them are really the most perfect looking and well-made movies, but they're all a shit ton of fun, and you're going to enjoy the entire experience. Nato, you touched on a few things that were kind of bigger flaws for me, I guess. One of which being the pace. It is very cramped and it moves by very fast. Part of this is due to Paramount making him shave down his original cut by a lot. They're like, this movie's way too long. You got to make like half of it go away. So it kind of does suffer from that. And then the characters was another big issue I had with it. They do kind of fall into these archetypes. You mentioned Cooper. He's kind of like the smooth-talking bad boy womanizer. Played by Richard T. Jones.
There you go.
He's a hilarious character. Reminded me a lot of Dave Chappelle's character in Con Air when we get there. Kind of like the comic relief.
Yeah.
Lawrence Fishburne kind of plays this stern, stoic leader with a no bullshit attitude. Sam Neill's kind of the mysterious outsider. Peters is the maternal figure to the crew. She's even called Mama Bear at some points in the film. So you get these like archetypes, and so you don't really need a lot of introduction to them because we've all seen these characters before. So we get a brief exposition scene where they're waking up from the alien-esque cryo freezing
Stasis.
Stasis was the word I was looking for. Thank you. So you get a brief introduction when they wake up from that, and then they're just like, okay, into the action. They're like, you know who these people are. So I don't think it's a huge flaw, but where I see issues in that is there's not really any character development between any of them, which is strange because you get things from their past coming up, because the ship kind of shows them what they're most afraid to relive in a way. And so, for example, Peters, the maternal figure, she sees her son, and he's always kind of sickly and injured, which is something she's very afraid of. But you don't really, like, she doesn't learn from these experiences that happen. The ship kind of just spooks her, takes her over, and then that's that. And I feel like that's kind of the same with any character who gets haunted by the ship and its hallucinations. So I think that was kind of a issue I saw with the film.
If I could jump in real quick, I actually kind of agree with you with the character development, because I think that's the one thing that kind of that I didn't mention in my little kind of intro thing, but yeah, Peters was the one that stuck a lot to me, not because she was like you mentioned it, like she didn't have any kind of character development. There's like really, at least for me, no arc. It felt like the whole purpose of her, like, the whole dichotomy with her son and her. I feel like there again, maybe it was because of that cut that Paramount forced Paul W.S. Anderson to do. Maybe there was something else in there that was vital to that arc, if there was any. But yeah, like I feel like she really, I guess to put it kind of bluntly, she was kind of wasted. You know, it's like she was just there to be kind of like the spoiler. She was like the first one to be killed, just like right off the bat, in quite brutal fashion.
I think Justin was, right?
Oh no, yeah, you're right. So like
she's pretty early though.
Right. So like she dies quite horrifically, but it almost feels kind of like, well, she didn't really change. She just kind of like, died. And I guess in these sort of horror movies, you kind of have to, I guess you have to have that happen. Just have like a meaningless death. But yeah, I agree with you about the character development.
Yeah, I think I gave him as a director, since like the theme for today was a good movie by a not good director. I think I gave him the benefit of the doubt, and that's why that's why I don't really knock the movie for a lot of those scenes, because like a lot of it is really not his fault. And then there's on top of that, like even if he went to Paramount, there's nothing that he can do because that footage has all been destroyed, and it's only available on I think 3 VHS tapes have it, the original cut.
Yeah.
So I agree that Kathleen Quinlan's character could have used more time, but I like the arcs of the other characters, and I specifically the Captain Miller. By the way, major spoiler.
He's given the most fully fleshed out arc.
Yeah, I forgot again to give them a spoiler alert, but it's okay. Yeah, I love his journey. Specifically, the way his character ends. He feels guilty the whole time. He's carrying around this guilt about leaving a crewman to burn down on a different ship, to burn with the ship. To burn to death, and the ending is that he sacrifices himself to save the remaining 2 crewmates by blowing up the ship. So his ending is in fire, much like the guilt that he's forced to confront. Yeah. And the stuff that bugged me was the very, very end. It felt derivative of Carrie. The decompression on the bridge when he gets sucked out into when Weir gets sucked out into space after being already possessed by the ship. We already just saw Justin get decompressed, and there were severe consequences to his body and to his brain, and then somehow Miller and what's her name,
Weir.
Starks.
Oh, Starks,
Miller and Starks are able to escape the bridge without any consequences to their bodies or to their minds. The baby bear and mama bear thing felt awkward to me. I didn't like that at all.
Yeah, and it comes out of nowhere. Just all of a sudden, they're like, "Oh, baby bear, mama bear."
Exposition. I never heard of it.
Yeah. And upon rewatches, it's not as scary. I think that's the other thing. The images that you see of hell still are disturbing and very, very graphic. I even use the pause button so I can get a real good look at them, and oh my god,
it's brutal.
Holy shit. Yeah, but those are my issues of the movie. The things that I like are the fact that we talked a little bit about production design and makeup, but every single piece of equipment, every single hallway, even the core of the event horizon itself, everything looks like a torture device, and it's really, really cool. And every texture just pops out of the frame. You can see all the grooves and all the tiles and all the spikes, and it's really, really scary and eerie to look at. And I wouldn't have gone on the ship in the first place just because of how crazy it looked. And then when Weir claws out his own eyes, it's it looks like there's loose skin hanging off his face. It looks pretty real even today, I think.
Yeah.
And again, I just love Lawrence Fishburne's character and his like. I don't mind that the others don't get that much development because I think his story still works really well for me, and the others like in my mind functioned as like reinforcement for the big theme of his arc.
So Jared, do you think that it eventually like that Miller ended up becoming like the main character, or was he like the main character all along?
I think both him and Weir start out as main characters, and then I don't know if there were any more scenes with Weir that got cut, but
right.
But his like the whole entire movie is about confronting your inner demons. Like even the director himself said, like, the original script was too much like Alien, so I changed it a lot, and I wanted to make it feel like a haunted house in space. And and I think he did a good job with that overall. I think there's like even the deaths of the characters, like you can tell they put a lot of like horror love into it.
Yeah.
Because they're very like imaginative deaths, and they're very wince-inducing deaths. Like I'm like, ooh, ooh. And a common.
Did you guys have a favorite death?
Ooh.
I would have to say, and it's probably my favorite scene too. So like I might as well just knock it out of the park with both of them. But
double down.
I think my favorite scene, just because of how like intense it got me, like it really, really was suspenseful, because I think Fishburne provided such a desperate like performance when he was trying to save Justin. When he's telling them, hey, like, hey, scrunch up, like, you know, get in the smallest position you can, close your eyes, like, let all your, and like just having all of that, and then as awkward as it is, the mama bear, baby bear stuff, like having that side, and then having Justin kind of be like, oh my gosh, it hurts and hurts. It's like all that culmination, I think, was like such a cool moment of like tenseness, grotesqueness, and like just some really, really well performed characters, just kind of like in a moment of desperation. And that part really, really did set the tone a little bit for me. I was like, oh shit, this is gonna be brutal. And it definitely was. I thought that death was it reminded me, I don't know if you guys ever saw the movie Life with Jake Gyllenhaal, Ryan Reynolds and such. But like there was a scene in that movie too where like the creature alien thing that like absorbs your flesh or whatever like goes inside of Ryan Reynolds and like starts eating away at him. I was like, oh fuck no, I can't do that. The same way with this, and I felt the same way. It was stomach churning. It was kind of like anxiety inducing in a good way.
Yeah.
And I just think it was really cool. I thought it was a really cool moment in the film.
Yeah, that shot of Miller catching Justin's like limp body in space with the little blood trail going back it's probably my favorite shot in the whole film for sure.
I think my favorite shot and my favorite scene is when he finds DJ's body like splayed out, and
the blood eagle.
Yeah, and he like has he like I don't know what Weir did, but he like filleted him, and like all his stuff is on the ground, and it's oh my god, that was
there's just viscera everywhere.
That one's brutal, and I love the reveal of it. Like you see him grab shit, and you're like, okay, he's probably just gonna like chop him up a bit, and then the reveal that he's like kind of displayed all Midsummer style is absolutely fantastic.
So good.
I think my favorite, it's probably one of the less inventive ones, but I think Peter's death is my favorite. Just because I love the way the ship draws her out by like having her chase her child. I think it's a very interesting way, and then it's surprising because you expect her to die, but you kind of expect the kid to like turn into something, murder
monster
her,
thing,
the way they set it up. Yeah, but the way she just like starts walking toward him and just falls down a hole, catches you off guard, and then the fact that she's still breathing at first when she lands. Is absolutely horrifying.
Yeah.
Like the fact that she feels it makes it that much worse for me.
Yeah. I love it.
I do think my favorite scene though is same as Renato's. despite it not being my favorite death, which is kind of strange.
Yeah. I do you guys see any like thematic similarities between these and the other two movies? Like why do you think this goes well, or
Yeah.
does it go well with the other two?
Yeah, I definitely saw a lot with the Mummy, in that like man does something he probably shouldn't, and like, be it like in this one it's more of a sci-fi and like don't fuck with black holes, like obviously, and then in the Mummy, don't fuck with Pharaoh's tombs. It is not shit you should do.
Yeah.
And so I think one person opening up a can of worms and thrusting an apocalyptic terror on other people is definitely a theme. Both movies have characters who have no eyes, which I thought was kind of funny there.
True, huh?
I
Yeah.
forgot about
Yeah,
that.
but with Con Air, I was kind of struggling to find a through line theme. You know the film better than I do. I've only seen it once.
Yeah.
So you may have something up your sleeve for me there.
What do you?
They were all a lot of fun.
Yeah.
What are you talking about, Jared? They all kind of had like the same. They all had the same thing. Don't do that thing. You know, like don't go into the ship.
Yeah.
Don't open the tomb.
Yeah.
Don't fuck with this man's parole.
True. True.
But no, I'm kidding. But yeah, I think the only semblance of kind of like what connects them together would be like the horror kind of vibe that it goes like that Event Horizon and the Mummy go for. I think more so Event Horizon. Event Horizon went full like body horror kind of stuff, and
Yeah.
Mummy did too. But I feel like Mummy had moments of levity. But yeah, no, I think I guess you could just say they all came out in the 90s.
Late 90s.
Yeah.
Do you guys think
Yeah.
and it's okay if you don't, do you guys think the movie would have been better if it was like more graphic and more violent? Because that's a lot of the stuff that got cut.
Yes.
I kind of agree. I don't think it needed it. I don't think like walking away, I wasn't thinking, hey, I wish it was there was more blood.
Right.
Like it's not something that immediately jumps out at
Yeah.
you, but I think it would have improved the film if it really leaned into it and committed even harder than it did.
Yeah.
Show us the blood orgy. Show us the entire.
Oh, okay.
I-
That's my favorite scene.
go
Never
ahead.
mind. As soon as he turns off the video, he's like, "We're leaving."
Speaking of that, like that video, I loved how there was like a moment where like it felt like somebody was holding like the camera and the guy was just like, guts everywhere, like he was just like holding like party. It was almost like a college frat party where everyone's just like dying and sharing organs and stuff.
Yep.
That was a cool.
You know
moment.
how parties are.
Yeah, you know how they are. You know how your standard college blood orgies are.
Yeah, with your mention of the we're leaving, my favorite line is probably when they find the first like intact body when they're going, and she lovingly calls it a corpsicle. I laughed so hard every time I see
I
that.
forgot about that.
All these movies have great little lines
Yeah,
thrown in. I feel like Con Air especially.
Oh my
We'll
goodness!
get into
yeah.
that.
We'll get
I think like I have like two lines. Not to say that they're my favorite, but I think one of them is my favorite. But I think the other one was kind of just like more so like a very very small piece of like some foreshadowing for the audience. But again, I gotta shout out my man Cooper. I love him. When Fishburne tells him, "Hey, are you ready to go?" He goes, "Oh, it's time to play Spam in the Can." I've never heard that. It made me laugh super hard. And then the second one was from Peters when she says, "This place is a tomb." Just something so eerie in the way she kind of like is walking into like the pit of the ship or something. But you can almost feel the cold in that like area, and just the way she says it, kind of like I was like, oof, this is no one needs to be told this is a horror movie, but some shit's about to go down.
Yeah.
Yeah. Kind of like when Miller says, when somebody drops the ball, we get the call.
Yep.
To kind of just set up what this group of people are. Do you guys think that the film did a good job kind of explaining the cause of these hallucinations and kind of what was going on? Or was it a bit confusing for the audience?
I think I understand. Well, I guess like the whole black hole kind of like trying to jump to like another dimension sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
It like obviously it was just a bunch of science mumbo jumbo at first, but then like obviously they had to dumb it down a bit. And I think the way Sam Neill's character Dr. Weir kind of put it, it was like, oh, okay, that makes sense. I guess like the whole hell part was kind of just like, oh well, the dimension they happened to run through, like the ship happened to run through, was hell. It's like, oh, okay.
Well,
but yeah.
When
Go ahead,
DJ
Jared, I'm sorry.
finally deciphers the full Latin sentence,
Yeah.
I think that's when it clicked for me.
Yeah.
Was because it's not, save us, it's save yourselves from hell.
From hell.
And so that's when you realize, like, oh, it's everybody's personal hell, and then there's like that's infecting their minds, but then hell is
good
also
point.
like a real place that's completely taken over the event horizon.
Yeah, I think the issue that I saw with them kind of trying to tell the audience what's going down is Sam Neill's character at one point, he gives a good explanation that's totally feasible, where he's like, oh, the gravity inside of the core can make you hallucinate. And so that plants a seed that you're like, oh, this is all the core just making people see something.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And then when it actually hurts people, it's a bit confusing. Like the fire is actually real around Captain Miller, and it can hurt him. So you're like, is this all in their head or is it that? But it's such a believable, and like the explanation could work, and it could be the explanation. So if you kind of latch on too hard to that and really believe the unreliable narrator there, it can throw you off when they fully reveal, oh, JK, it's hell latched onto this ship and is rooted in it.
Yeah.
Right. And if I can add something else, I think like I think that's the reason, like how Jared A said like prior, where he was talking about how like since it was Paul W.S. Anderson, like he kind of gave him a chance. I kind of almost gave that leeway to the explanation of why the ship was quote unquote possessed and everything. I don't know why I didn't do that with the characters, but with the theme, with the how of like how it came to be, I was just like, well, I mean, I guess he has the advantage of like cosmic horror, where it's like it doesn't have to be like 100% understandable. It just has to be kind of horrifying existentially, and I think that's the reason why I was kind of like in a way satisfied with what I got. Because it was just like, oh, okay, well, the whole point of the movie was just kind of like to torture the characters with how Jared mentioned, like their own personal kind of version of hell. And personally, I think that's the reason why I was kind of like, oh, well, it's just going through dimension, went through hell, and it's just tormenting these people. And I never really thought about like the explanation for it. I just kind of like accepted it and like went forward. You know what I'm saying?
You just go along with the ride.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I agree.
Yeah.
Did you?
Yeah.
Did you guys feel the same way about the ending?
Yeah. The ending for me felt very. Just to put it bluntly, it felt very like out of nowhere, and even just like the way how it fades, and it's just like it's done. It's just like, hey, we're awake, and then all of a sudden, it's like, well, I feel like there was gonna be something else, or maybe like not include that part. I agree with you. It was a bit derivative, and I think it kind of even threw me off. Like it almost kind of took me out of the experience a little bit. I was just like, wow, that was really awkward. That's the only thing I could think about. Like, wow, that was really awkward how that ended.
Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of like the callback to We're waking up. I like that they kind of harken back to it a bit, but it's kind of anticlimactic. I kind of wish they did it and then maybe had a bigger hint that the evil is also on that part of the ship, and it kind of spread itself like a virus. I think that would have been a good way to justify the nightmare continuing.
Yeah.
But I don't hate it, but I'm definitely not a fan of the ending.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely not.
I think that's a good interpretation of it, and I think it is kind of cool that it's a full circle deal with Weir and then Starks at the end. And one of the big themes of the movie is that like you can't run away from your trauma. So I think it makes sense, and I understand why Anderson went with that ending. But I don't know. If you've watched movies from like with similar endings like Carrie or Nightmare on Elm Street, like it's a little yeah.
I agree. I just feel like that, maybe we will never know, but like I don't know how much of that like time that Anderson had to cut out, like how much it meant to the film, because obviously we've made films ourselves, so like we always want to keep everything, sometimes even the things that we shouldn't keep. But I'm
your darlings.
Yeah, I'm forever like gonna be kind of wishing I could see like the whole thing to see maybe like if there were gonna be moments that maybe added more I guess fulfillment with the ending. But I see the attempt, and honestly I think I now that I'm sitting on it, I think I do agree more with Jared A, where it's like it just feels like Anderson wanted to make something that he felt was going to be really good. He just didn't get a fair shake on it, like he really didn't get a fair shake on it, just because it's such a out there film, especially for the 90s where like horror wasn't doing so well. So it felt almost kind of like, not to say that we were cheated from something, but definitely wish I could have seen like the whole 2 hour and 10-minute runtime, if anything,
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's pretty fertile ground for a remake, honestly. Usually I'm not a big fan of remakes, but I feel like you could kill it if you had the right people on board.
Yeah.
So just not Paul Anderson directing it?
Well, I wouldn't want him to remake his own gosh darn movie.
True.
It's been done before. Hitchcock did it.
Has it? Oh,
yeah, Hitchcock did it with
like
the man.
Mikhail Haneke?
Which one?
Like, are you talking about the Mikhail Haneke movie? The what was it? Funny Games.
Funny Games.
I think?
Yeah, I didn't like the remake for that one though.
Me
but
neither.
the Man Who Knew Too Much by Alfred Hitchcock.
Oh yeah.
He remade his own movie, and
Yeah, that's good. Good point. See,
they're both
Jared
really
with the
good.
knowledge.
I think they're both equally good.
Good point. I also have to applaud like the for Event Horizon, like you also mentioned the production design. The one thing that stuck to me, like the image that like was ingrained in my brain was like, oh, that rhymed. But when they like are approaching the core, and like the door to the core,
the meat grinder hallway.
Yeah, like the door to the core is like a gigantic eye.
Yeah.
Like that just like it. That was so freaking eerie, and I agree. I think when you have like a set that you built and you put a lot of love, it almost becomes tangible to the audience. Like everything looks like whenever they fall on it, it's like, oh, that shit hurt. Like it really, really hurt. Like I'm reminded once again, but like Peter's death, where it's like the impact of her death of her fall. Like it just so you feel it almost. Like I was like, oh shit, that was a really bad drop. So
yeah.
But yeah, no, I think for me, just like the practicals and the design, everything was just such a treat. It's always such a treat to have practicals, especially with these horror movies.
Yeah, the core is absolutely fucking breathtaking and horrifying. I absolutely love the design of the core.
Yeah.
Especially when it aligns and creates the little gooey portal. Like, yeah, the goo doesn't look amazing. It's it's not the best, but they didn't really have technology to make it look better.
Right.
So you can't really fault them too much. But I think it's an incredible set piece they got.
Well, dude, apparently, like they spent like a third of like the budget like on the CG for like that like upside down, like kind of tilt open, like the shot of like the whole ship in the beginning, and I'm just like, damn, just for that shot. But it looked pretty cool.
Yup.
But yeah.
Yeah. I think that's all I got. Unless you guys have any last thoughts on Event Horizon, I think we've talked this shit to death.
I'm good to go.
Yeah, I'm good. I think I'm actually ready to do my debut. You know.
Do it.
Yeah.
I'm ready for my close up.
What you got for us, Nato?
Okay, I chose a movie from 1999. So I was the outlier. I could have done all 1997 movies, but I'm sorry. This is The Mummy. Technically a remake of the 1930s, I believe. Universal monster flick, directed by Stephen Sommers, who also made most famously the captivating movie G.I. Joe: Rise of Cobra. He also made 2004's Van Helsing. He made the obviously the sequel to The Mummy Returns. But before that, he made The Jungle Book, Deep Rising, and the not so good Catch Me If You Can, not the good one.
And not the good Jungle Book either.
And not the good Jungle Book either. I'm gonna read you guys the little
No Love for Tomb Raider?
synopsis. No,
Yeah, I forgot he did Tomb Raider too.
Steven Sommers did, or
Was that Steven Sommers? Oh no, that was my director. My bad.
Yeah,
My bad.
wasn't it?
yeah, I think you're talking about Simon West.
I remember seeing. Yeah, I remember seeing Tomb Raider on the list of one.
My bad.
But yeah, sorry. I had the plot summary. Sorry. At an archaeological dig in an ancient city of Hamunaptra, an American played by the forever lovable to me, my childhood hero, Brendan Fraser. An American serving in the French Foreign Legion accidentally awakens a mummy who begins to wreak havoc as he searches for the reincarnation of his long lost love. We also have performances by Rachel Weisz, who plays Evelyn, John Hannah, who plays her Evelyn's brother Jonathan. We have Arnold Vosloo, who plays the titular mummy Imhotep. Kevin J. O'Connor, who's a frequent collaborator with Stephen Sommers, Jonathan Hyde, and a bunch of other people, Oded Fair, and it's a really good time. So I'm more than happy to hear what you guys thought of 1999's The Mummy.
Go for it, Jared. All right. we both were like, which one's going first? So this one I've seen before. I've encountered The Mummy. So I was rewatching these all yesterday. I watched them back to back to back. I pulled off the triple feature. But I was having a tough time sitting on a couch for 6 hours, so I decided to drink a little during The Mummy. I was like, I'm very familiar with this film. I can do that. So my notes are kind of hilarious,
awesome,
and very misspelled. But I thoroughly enjoy this movie. I think it's fantastic. It's a lot of fun. A lot of the set pieces are great, much like Event Horizon, but the special effects also a bit dated just because 90s. That's just how shit turns out. But I absolutely adore this movie. It's very nostalgic. It kind of taps into my child brain from when I first saw it. And I gave it a 6.2 out of 10.
Yeah. I gave it a 6.5. I also really love this movie. It kind of holds a special place in my brain for like being one of those movies that like traumatized me as a kid, because the scare,
especially when the mummy opens his mouth and shit,
or the scarabs, like the scarabs scared the shit out of me, dude. Like this idea that like bugs could eat you alive. Like when that one digger gets
he falls.
Yeah, he falls and he gets eaten by. That's been in my head since I was like 5. Like I watched the movie on like VHS at my aunt's house or something like that, and oh my goodness, what like it was super scary to me. So like I didn't revisit it for years, So seeing it now as an adult, it's really really fun, and I can see its fingerprints all over like the Pirates of the Caribbean series, over the Journey to the Center of the Earth series, National Treasure, and the Uncharted video games. Like I can definitely like this movie made I think like 5 times its budget.
Yes.
And it's just super like it was critically like mixed, but the massive financial success that it was, like, you know, getting 2 reboots, 2 sequels, and like, you know, the Mummy's like like you can definitely see its, like I said, fingerprints over a ton of movies and media over the next 20 years after it came out. And I love Brendan Fraser and Rachel Weisz in this movie. This, you know, I they've been 2 of my favorite actors since I was a little kid, partially because of this and because of their other work. But you know, and it's cool to see them kind of slowly making a comeback nowadays. Like Brendan Fraser's doing Doom Patrol, which I love him in there, and then Rachel Weisz did the Favorite. So it's been cool to see their careers go so it's been cool to go back and watch this movie where I was first introduced to their talent. I do agree about the CGI, and a big reason why I gave it a 6.5 is, like, even though I love the story and I love the characters and I love the themes, the white actors as spray tanned to look like Egyptians.
Yeah.
It pisses me off a lot. And even the Middle Eastern actors that they get are all like Israeli or Persian.
Yep.
So you know, it's a big bummer that you can, you know, it's a reminder of how far we've come in Hollywood and how much work people still have left to do in the industry. But overall I still really, really love the movie. I can't wait to watch it again. The subtitle fonts are really awesome too. Like, oh my God. It's so good.
Yeah, they are. They are.
Yeah. My third note that I wrote down was, quote, "These some Caucasian ass Egyptians."
They truly were, because they are in fact not Egyptians.
Yeah. To be fair, Imhotep's actor is actually from Africa, but
yeah, he's South African. Yeah.
Still a white man.
Yeah, he is. Yeah, he is. I think a lot of the love that I have for this movie stems from my nostalgia with it a lot. I grew up watching this movie like on VHS all the time.
Yeah.
And so I just think I wouldn't say that should probably be like a measurement for how good a movie is, but for me, I think the reason why I love it so much is, like, even still when I revisit things from my childhood, usually they're not as like cool as I remember them being when I was a kid. So The Mummy actually was one of the few movies where I was like, this still kind of holds up for me.
Yeah.
Like, this still really holds up for me. It still has captures that like feeling of adventure as a kid that I very much loved. And you know, even when you're like when you're a kid, you don't really care about like those kind of like love stories, I guess. Like, even then I really loved like the whole like back and forth with Rachel Weisz and Brendan Fraser,
Mm-hmm.
you know, Rick O'Connell and Evelyn. I love the set pieces. The CGI absolutely looks kind of crap, especially with like the sandstorm face thing. That always kind of throws me off. And honestly, like the first scene where the pharaoh is running, like riding his chariot through like the city of Imhotep, the city of Hamunaptra, like you can tell that it's definitely CGI, and everything, and it kind of looks kind of weird. But I think I really just love like the main 3 people. I know that I'm kind of like being a bit of a stingy guy, but I fall in love so hard with Rick O'Connell, Evelyn, and Jonathan.
Yeah.
That like I just think like they're just so good together that if I were to see them on screen, it'd almost be like a reunion where I'd probably like start weeping. But enough gushing. I do think you make some good points, Jared. Yeah, that's super disappointing that they're not they weren't able, or they weren't willing to give actual you know, actors from Egypt, or you know, to really accommodate the characters well. And it's a shame that they didn't do that. But that being said, I still really love it a lot. I love the music too, especially like the love theme for Rachel Weisz and Brendan Fraser's character there. It's such a,
Yeah.
I think it's a clarinet. It sounds so lovely. It's so it's sweeping. And again, it kind of encapsulates that like feeling of adventure for me. And I guess all that stuff culminates into my rating of a 7.6. I think this movie is probably one of the I think it's Steven Sommers' best movie, which doesn't say much, but which doesn't say much. But no, yeah, I'm very interested to hear like do you guys have like a favorite scene of this movie, and like a maybe like a line that kind of stuck with you, made you laugh or anything?
Yeah, my favorite scene is probably when the mummy finally tracks down Rachel Weisz's character, because I love the shadow that they do on the wall.
Yeah.
Like you see the guard shadow, and then you see him get fucking murked, and then you see the mummy like take form. And I think it's such a badass way to kind of get around your shoddy CG. Because if there's something that you're not excelling at, such as special effects, play with it. Like, play around it. Try to think of a creative way to make it look good. And I think they totally did. The shadow is amazing, and then the sand pouring through the keyhole is like it creates such a good tension. You know what's coming. You know something the character doesn't, and hasn't quite caught on to. And I think it's just a super well crafted scene, and it's probably one of the scenes that hold up still the most for me. So I absolutely adore it.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. That's a great scene. I love the finale where it's like three different fights happening at once, and three different chases, and they're all just kind of running around this like really awesome set of like rocks and sand and stuff, and it just looks absolutely beautiful and fun, and it's really engrossing because you care about the characters so much at that point that you don't want them to, get caught by the guy. And then, and yeah, to clarify, like I'm not saying that the casting, makes or breaks a movie, but it took me out of the movie, and it was just a factor in my personal enjoyment. The movie. True. No. Yeah, the movie is still really, really, excellent all the way through. And I wrote down a quote from Roger Ebert. He's like, "Sometimes I was unreasonably pleased." And he gave it 3 stars out of 4. Like this, this is like the most famous film critic of all time, and he couldn't even tell you why he likes The Mummy, but he just likes The Mummy. I also love the street chase when the whole town, when all of Cairo is like kind of weird mummy zombies, and then they have to run away, and there's like this kind of cool like Dawn of the Dead type like desperation that you feel, and I love that part as well.
Yeah, no, I think there's 2 parts that I truly love in it, 2 scenes. So I'm cheating a bit, but
How dare you?
I know I have to keep on breaking your
fucking
rules.
nerve on this guy. God, we invite you on our podcast and you fuck everything up.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'll keep it quick. The first I guess not scene but sequence of events. It's like when the I blank on the name of like the group that is supposed to protect Egypt from like the mummy, or like trying to keep the mummy entombed. But when they find out where like the key is in the map and everything, and they head to the boat where Brendan Fraser and Rachel Weisz, everyone's there, all the Americans and everything, and that whole fight scene is such a blast for me. I love it. I love it a lot. I love when Rick O'Connell tells the warden of the prison where he was in. He was like, "Hold this, I'll go get help," and then he just jumps off of the boat into the water, and the guy's like, "Oh, this motherfucker," and he just follows with him. I love how Jonathan criticizes Americans because like it was such a America thing to do. They're just like, woohoo, yeah, freaking like blasting their revolvers, yeah, and then he's just like, Americans, and that's probably like the first moment where I'm like, oh crap, this is gonna like it gets me excited.
Yeah.
And then the second scene, as you know, it's kind of like a love-hate for me because I think it's kind of abrupt, but like when Imhotep finally like kind of like makes his approach to Rachel Weisz's character Evelyn, and he you can tell how terrified she is. She does such a wonderful job conveying how scared she is, and then not only that, but having the guy who just got his tongue and eyes removed, like just like help me, and you're just like, oh, it's just such a creepy scene. But I think the thing that kind of like breaks it a little bit for me is like how Brendan Fraser just magically is like, Evelyn, and then like he's just there, and you're just like, wait, you weren't able to get in a minute ago, and now all of a sudden you're like, oh, we gotta get out of here, and then like. He sees the mummy, Imhotep like roars, and then Brendan's like, ah! And then he like gets the shotgun blast off, and it's that part has always stuck with me. I love how Imhotep looks still to this day. I think if there's one thing that does look really cool is Imhotep. I love how, especially like his decomposed body sort of thing. Like I love how a piece of his skull is missing, and
Yeah. And how they call it juicy.
yeah, he looks very, yeah, exactly. Jonathan even says that. Jonathan and Rick, they're like, because she's like, oh, it looks so, and then they both go, juicy.
Like, you all were thinking juicy right there. That was all. Every single one of you were like, yeah, juicy.
Juicy. Looks succulent. This is what I want.
Yeah. There's so many great quotes in the movie that like for any other with any other director with any other movie they would have completely taken you out of the action, but they work so well for the tone of this. It's great.
No, for sure. I mean, another one that kind of pops into my brain is just like when that whole boat fight scene is done, you know, because like Benny has his own group of like Americans who he promised he takes Hamunaptra, and Brendan has his, and like he's just like, hey O'Connell, we got all the horses, and Rick is just like, hey Benny, you're on the wrong side of the river. It's just such goofy lines that work so well because of how much charisma the characters have. I mean, I truly believe like a lot of the main cast, like they were really into it, like they were super into it, and they put pretty much all of like their bravado and their like I guess they put themselves out there like a lot, and I just love how it feels so natural to them. Like Jonathan is some like con artist, but like his heart is in a good place. He just happens to be kind of a greedy asshole every once in a while. You have Rick, who's this brooding like machista guy from he's American, you know, and then you have Evelyn, who's like this supposedly this like super quiet like, you know, librarian, and it all works so well, at least for me. But yeah, did you guys have any things like that bothered you about the movie, problems or plot holes or anything that kind of like maybe took you out of it a bit?
One for me,
or any issues.
It's a small thing. The guy Evelyn works for, like the head librarian. I don't know what you call him. Yeah. He was like, "Oh yeah, Hamunaptra does not exist. People keep looking for it and disappearing. Let's just ignore. Let's just not pay any attention to the like. Maybe that's a red flag that it could be real and that these legends are
true.
But like, there's things like that where they're like, oh, it's all just a myth, despite all these signs being there that like, no, it's not.
I think the screenplay structure and like how the beats get laid out. Especially in the first two acts, like it's very basic, and it's very kind of like this is the scene where we explain this. This is the scene where we talk about the character. This is the scene where we establish this relationship. And so like the tone of the movie and the fun nature of it and Jerry Goldsmith's score, like it kind of masks how basic it is.
Yeah.
But you know, like I'm not thinking about the script when I'm watching The Mummy. You know, like
No.
like unless I'm taking notes like I did this time. Like, you know, it's just it's an underwhelming thing about the movie, but you know, it's still it's not that bad.
Yeah.
It doesn't bother me that much, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, and you know that you actually make a good point. Again, I always, whenever I talk about The Mummy, I always feel kind of like bad because it's not to say that I don't love the film or I don't want to like I don't want people to know that I love the film. It's more so like the fact that I know it's not the greatest movie ever. It's nowhere close to even being perfect, but I'm gonna probably like gush over it so much to the point where it's like this is the perfect movie. There's nothing wrong with it. Just watch it.
It's just so lovable that you overlook any flaws you see, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, true. Go ahead, Jared. Sorry.
There are things that I love about the script too, like especially the humor. And I know we've talked about it a lot, but one of my favorite lines in the movie is when he's about to be hung, and the executioner's like, "Any last requests?" And he's like, "Yeah, loosen the knot and let me go."
And he looks up to the
guy and he's like, "Should I do?" And he goes, "No, don't cut him down." Speaking.
I also like.
Go ahead, Jared. Go ahead.
Yeah, I also like in that scene where she's like, "Why'd you kiss me?" And he's like, "I was about to be hanged."
It
Like,
seemed like the best thing to do.
It seemed like the right thing to do.
Speaking of that scene where he's about to get hanged, like he like I was reading someone like the production of, like about it, and he was just like Brennan was doing an interview and he was like, "No, yeah, like that part where I was getting hung, I was getting hung. Like I was getting hung. Like I wasn't expecting the thing to actually choke me out, and neither did the crew. So they were all just like recording, and they were all just like shooting the scene, and they're like, "Wow, Brennan's really doing some good job." And then all of a sudden he passes out and turns blue, and they're like, "Oh Jesus Christ, he's actually freaking dying." But that shot where he's choking out actually made it into the movie, and that's what you see. So like him kind of like fucking having his eyes go to the back of his skull and everything. Like, yep, that's Brendan like close to dying.
Yeah. Going back to what Jared was saying about the script, I do like that they kind of call attention to the basic beat structure of it. There's a line where Brendan Fraser says, "We're gonna rescue damsel in distress, kill the bad guy, and save the world." And so like they're self-aware that they're like, yeah, we're making a fun movie. Like, who really cares?
True.
That's a good point.
True.
I forgot about that line.
Yeah, I forgot about that line too, Jared. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah. Drunk Jared was on top of that.
Yeah,
shit.
you were.
I do have a weird question.
Go ahead.
In terms of like their medium, the ride, The Mummy. Do you think the ride of The Mummy ranks higher in terms of rides than the movie does in terms of movies?
Yes. I think the ride is also something to behold. Again, the ride was kind of created like when the hype of The Mummy was like at its peak. So, I mean, I think genuinely, like I forget how many people actually love that series until the third one came out, obviously. But I think the ride itself is also very cinematic. It's very, very cinematic, and I know that it's like, well, no, duh, Nato, like it's Universal Studios, but like it's really well done. I don't know if you guys have you ridden it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like I really love how like it kind of like almost hypes you up when you're in line. I love how they put so much effort. It feels like you are like on a movie set. And then again, I think it was because I was as a kid too, but I think it holds up just as good, to be honest.
I actually got to revisit it last year, and it still is a fantastic roller coaster, and I thoroughly enjoy it. I don't know if I like it as much as the movie, but
Yeah.
Because this movie is like, it's also like super versatile in terms of like how you can enjoy it. Like you could drink during it. Obviously, you can break it down and analyze it, and
whatever.
you could just turn it on in the background, and no matter how you play it in your house, like it's still like it has that thing. You know, if I'm on a roller coaster, like I got to be in the mood for a roller coaster.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
true. Yeah,
Yeah,
good
that's
point.
true.
Good point. See,
One of the weirdest experiences I've had on a ride was that ride. I was in town for a broadcasting convention in high school because I'm a fucking nerd. And we were at Universal Studios, and they're like, "Oh, you guys are film boys. We're gonna put you through the ride normally, and then we're gonna put you through the ride with all like the house lights on, so you can see all the
Oh, wow.
mechanics
Yeah.
of like how things jump out at you." And it was super cool to see. Just like you're like, "Oh, there's a smoke machine right there, just in plain sight," but because of the lighting,
it's not
you
there.
don't
Yeah.
see it. It was cool to see it stripped back like that.
That the same thing happened to me when I went to Disneyland and I was on Space Mountain. They were like, "Well, there's like for some weird reason there was no line," and we were just like, "Okay." And then they're like, "You want to go again?" And it's like, "Yeah, sure." It's like, "Oh, we're having problems. We're gonna have to turn on the lights. Is that okay?" And I'm like, "Yeah, fuck it, go." Let me tell you, having the lights on takes away so much from the experience. I was just like, "Wow,
Yeah.
this is so boring."
This is just a roller coaster.
Like it was just like, wow, this is not even cool. Like this is, oh, there's a strobe light that acts as like the stars. Wow.
Yeah.
But yeah, that your story just brought up a little memory of mine too.
Yeah.
But yeah, do you guys have anything to say about the mummy at all anymore?
I love the scarabs again, but that's still the scariest part of the movie to me. And I love that they symbolize like power and wealth, but then they also, like in the movie, symbolize greed, and they literally consume the people that they attack from the inside out, or just completely consume their bodies. I love that about the movie.
Yeah.
And
Also, them crawling under the skin holds up. Like it actually looks good still.
That was one of the other ones that really traumatized me. I was like, did he just run into a wall and die? Like, can you do that? Like, oh my god, I was fine.
When you're freaking out like him, probably.
Yeah. Glass doors were your fucking nightmare.
Yeah. So good. And I also want to give a shout out to the stunt team for this movie, because so for a PG-13 movie, I don't think I've seen another one where 10 people get set on fire and all 10 look amazing.
True.
Yeah, like it's really cool.
True.
Yeah, and we talked a lot about the chemistry between the two leads, and they're both still great actors, and they both were great actors then. And it's just fun to see that like time capsule of them as young people, and
they're both fucking national treasures.
So good.
Yeah. What about you, Jared Lombardo? Do you have anything else to say about the Mummy?
I think I pretty much said my piece on it. Great movie. I absolutely adore it. I know I gave it kind of a low-ish score. But the enjoyment factor is out of this world.
Yeah, no, yeah, of course. Like objectively, maybe middle of the road movie. That's why I think like 6.2, 6.5. I think that's very fair. But like enjoyment wise, oh yeah, 11. Put that shit to 12. Like I love it.
Our amps go to 11.
Oh yeah, our amps go to 11.
So good.
But yeah, that was my movie. That was the one that I decided to choose.
Good shit, man. Good job with it.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Jared, what are we doing next?
All right, today we're gonna be doing not top fives because there's 3 of us, so we'll be doing top 3 book adaptations for this next segment. So for we'll just cycle, like I'll do my 3, and then you guys do 3, and then 2, 2, 2, 1, 1, 1. And yeah, we so to narrow it down for at least my list, I don't know what these guys did. We all kind of surprised each other with this, so I'm excited to do it right now. Let's jump in. To narrow it down, I picked 3 movies where I loved the books as much as I loved the movies. So this isn't a list of my favorite or what I think are the best adaptations of all time. So suffice to say, like, Godfather's not on this list, although it is an amazing movie and an amazing adaptation. My third favorite book, or third favorite movie where I loved the book as much as I loved the movie, is Little Women 2019. I really, really enjoyed this movie. It's the second feature directed by Greta Gerwig. It stars Saoirse Ronan, Emma Watson, Eliza Scantz. I'll look up her name later. I forget. I'm sorry. But who else is in it? Florence Pugh, Laura Dern, Bob Odenkirk, Meryl Streep. It's like the most stacked cast of American actors that I've ever seen. And I was following and Timothy Chalamet too. Oh my goodness, I completely forgot about him. But I was following the news of this. I was following the news of this movie when it first came out, and when it was still being made, and I was getting more and more hyped as it came along. And I had grown up reading the book Little Women, which is an amazing work by Louisa May Alcott. The book helped shape me as a storyteller and as a person. And the movie did not disappoint. It totally lived up to it, because you can feel Greta Gerwig's love for the story in it, even though she makes a lot of changes. So one of the big changes she makes is it's non-linear. So the book follows these girls from childhood to adulthood, and this one, it cuts back and forth between adulthood and childhood, and it's not done. Excuse me. It's not done in a way of like intercutting or like interruption of one story. It's both stories speaking to each other, and I think that elevates that speaks to Greta Gerwig's like love for the book as a whole, and it gives a unique effect on some of the most iconic moments in the book. Specifically, spoiler alerts, Beth's death. In the book she gets sick, and then she gets better as a kid, and then as an adult she doesn't make it. And in the movie it's great because they put those two scenes together, and so you get that feeling of like, oh man, she was just right there. She was just okay, and now she's gone. And I
right.
I never in my wildest dreams thought a director would choose to do that, but Gerwig is the real deal, man. Like I think it's a great movie, and that's my number 3.
I love Greta.
Yeah,
I love Greta.
Yeah.
Yep, that's my number 3.
Cool. Do you want to go, Jared? Or do you want me to go?
You can go. You're the guest.
Okay, cool. I kind of did something different too. I chose movies, I guess, like that have books that I can enjoy. Like they're different from one another, but I can enjoy separately, if that makes any sense. My number 3 is Drive, by the movie Drive by Nicholas Winding Refn. The book is also called Drive, but let me tell you, I was kind of expecting the problem that I have, I guess, is like that I found out that it was a book after I saw the movie, and there's a ton of issues going into that. First of all, because you're gonna have this expectation of the book being almost kind of like directly the same as the movie. So like having that like knowledge of the movie kind of made me, when I read the book twice, because the first time I read the book I was like, okay, this is gonna be just like the movie. It's gonna have this like very brooding driver character, right? And he was gonna have this, arc because of his love interest and so forth. But the book is just pretty much just this guy who's a driver, and he falls in love with this Latina woman, and they actually kind of have like sort of like a life together almost. And there's actually a sequel to the book, but I'm actually that being said, I do appreciate the book. The book is very short. It's a very quick read. It's incredibly stylistic too, in James Salas's own way, the author. So you can definitely enjoy it for what it is. That being said, however, I think like Nicholas Winding Refn kind of took it a bit further and actually added his own. First of all, obviously Nicholas Winding Refn, I think we've kind of like known as the guy who has his style, and I think that's one of the first things that kind of stick out about him is that he's very stylized, right? He likes that, he likes that Ryan Gosling type character who's just like staring, doesn't talk much, and he just sits like behind like neon lights and whatnot. But I actually love the fact that he actually adds so much like symbolism in the movie, something that the book didn't have at all. I love that he made it a little bit more dense thematically, but I still recommend the book. The book is still really good. It holds up a lot. You can see where a lot of the influences like came from making the antagonists, because the antagonists in the book also kind of are the same, this grimy kind of like dudes who just want to make money. Not the most incredibly layered characters, but they still do their jobs really well. But yeah, that's my number 3.
Hell yeah, dude.
Groovy. I also kind of had to narrow it down because there's so many. We could just pick like Godfather Part 1, 2, and 3, or like Lord of the Rings, and just make that the top 3. So I kind of did movies that added something different and kind of in the adaptation itself took liberties and kind of made it a breath of fresh air.
Of course.
And so my number 3 is a movie that the author himself said the movie was better than the book. And when I read the book, which I read after watching the movie, not unlike Nato with Drive, I was like, how could anybody turn this like loosely structured gibberish into a novel? And that's David Fincher's Fight Club, based off the novel of the same name by Chuck Palahniuk. I don't know if you guys have read it, but it's written so fucking weird.
Yep.
Like it just will go on some stream of consciousness tangent, and just kind of take you down a weird trail about Bob's organs, and but the movie did something weird with it and kind of made it work. And I think that's incredibly impressive, just based off the writing style alone. And it's obviously a very classic film in its own right and an amazing film. And I couldn't not include Fincher. It was between this or Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. And so I went with this because it seemed like a more impressive feat to translate it onto the screen.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, man. Well, my number 2 is The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. It's a movie that I love just as much as the book.
The Swedish version or
Fincher's version.
Oh,
yeah.
Yes.
I prefer Fincher's version, just because the Swedish is also great, but I love the I think his very unique and distinct and easily recognizable visual style translates the book better, for me at least.
It's very steely.
Yeah, and I love the kind of weird James Bond intro in the beginning. It's super good.
Cool.
yeah, and great score by Pixar composer
Trent Reznor.
So good. Yeah, I love that it preserves the 5-act structure of the book. They don't play chicken like they normally do with American adaptations of books. I love that it's an incredible story about two incredible characters. You know, and it's just in both incarnations of the story. It's jaw dropping, it's shocking, but it's also super emotionally investing. And I you know, Rooney Mara's performance in that movie is one of the best performances of the decade that it came out, and I really appreciate that movie, and I really appreciate that book. Like, that's one of the few books where like I've had to like take a break from reading, you know, because it was just so much, and I would read it in the middle of my pre-calculus class, and like I'd almost like make audible like sounds that the like my classmates are like, "What are you reading?" And I'm like, "This book." Yeah, that's my number 2.
Cool. My number 2 is a movie that I think Jared Lombardo has had enough of me talking about, but I'm gonna have to do it again. I'm gonna have to do it to you.
I've just had enough of you talking.
Makes sense.
Well, guess what? Buckle up, dude. I'm gonna talk some more. This book is considered to be a part of the contemporary science fiction, I guess. You know, the world of science fiction is considered new weird, and the author kind of embraced that. It's James Vandermeer's Annihilation.
Surprise.
I know. Surprise. Yeah. Surprise!
Ex Machina is better.
Both the book and the movie are actually stellar pieces of quality art, in my opinion. It's very, very different, I must say, because I remember when Alex Garland was being interviewed about like why he chose Annihilation. He was kind of like, I was just reading it, I read through it, and then I just wrote a script about what I remembered about it. And yep. it definitely feels that way. And you know, maybe some people might think of that as kind of disrespectful, but I kind of appreciate what Alex Garland did, because Annihilation, the book, it still has that like that facing your own demons sort of thing, but not as much as the movie, right? Like, not as much as having like that, the theme of like everyone here is like quote unquote broken, right? Everyone here has their own problems and so forth. And the book is more about like the dread of like to put it bluntly, the dread of existence, having this thing that you can't stop. Really, it kind of feeds into your own, like, I guess it makes you self-reflect. Like our main character, who honestly just goes by the biologist, there's no name, there's nothing. You still kind of have like your group of people, but they don't stick around in the book. The book, they kind of like immediately almost like, we're going our own separate ways, I hate all of you. And so they all go and do their own thing. But you still follow the biologist, and the biologist is this person who just kind of wants to be alone, but and it still has to do with the husband, like, right, like pushing him away and so forth, but it's not necessarily like an affair. It's more about her like desire to just be by herself and do her own thing. That being said, however, I think the movie kind of gave a more accessible way to watch the movie, in my opinion. Because when I first saw the movie, I think it was pretty, when you guys saw it, like, it was pretty straightforward, at least for me, what it was kind of about. Guilt and trying to, you know, the self-destruction of ourselves because of it and so forth. But I think Vandermeer does such a wonderful job at conveying body horror and conveying like this absolute cosmic dread that a lot of people might have, and it's just in our nature to feel small when presented with something that we don't understand. And he really does a good job. I wouldn't say that the book is horrifying. It really isn't. But it's disturbing sometimes. It's very, very bleak at times. But it's one that I think kind of like can stand by itself. I read the book also after the movie, but it didn't even kind of like register for me, because right off the bat it's so different. So I think in a way, they're two separate forms of the same thing,
Yeah.
but both equally done well. And that's my number 2.
Dope.
My number 2 is one that's probably strayed as far as you can from the original material, while still staying true to it.
So the Cat in the Hat?
The novella. Fuck, you spoiled it.
I know.
No, the original novella was written by a Polish-English novelist, Joseph Conrad, in 1899. But it was adapted to be about the Vietnam War and Apocalypse Now by Francis Ford Coppola. Originally about a man traveling down the Congo River, and kind of the narrator telling his story about that experience. But what they turned it into was this huge war epic that's horrifying and deeply human. And you see like the darkest parts of your mind, which is kind of a theme in both media. But such a bold adaptation to be like, we're gonna take this thing that's not at all about the Vietnam War because it didn't happen yet, and we're gonna mix that shit up. And I think it's just an incredible feat to have both of them be incredibly good.
Nice.
Yeah, cool, man. Yeah, cool.
And there's a great thematic similarity too, because they both talk about imperialism and all that stuff.
Yep.
Yeah. I love that movie.
Good. Great book, man. Great book. I love the book.
Yeah. My number 1 comes at is a surprise to no one. Who if you know me, if you've like even bet me for 2 minutes, you know that I absolutely adore this movie. You know that I've seen it 11 times, and I've read the books, because it's the movie's based off the whole series. I've read the books like 3, 4, 5 times. I don't remember. I think I'm in the middle of my 5th or 6th time, but it's Scott Pilgrim versus the World, 2010, directed by Edgar Wright. Love this movie. To me, it's cinematically so unique and so original, and so just perfect all the way through. Even the parts that felt slow, like the first time watching it, like they make sense to me now, like because of what's going on in the story. And it's just the gift that keeps on giving. The performances, the effects, the fights, everything is so good. And it's based off a comic book series by Brian Lee O'Malley. They actually had Brian Lee O'Malley on set, and in the writer's room, in the storyboard room, and in the edit room with Edgar Wright. So you can feel his fingerprints on the movie as well. And there's this kind of really unique creative unity. The comic is a great comic book, is great as a piece of the comic book art form, but it reads like a novel. Like it takes tangents, and it explores side stories that you wouldn't have thought existed, because if you just saw the movie, you wouldn't know, like, oh, Kim Pine has like a whole backstory from when she dated Scott in high school, and Envy actually has more character development as well in the comic, and it's really rewarding to see the comic's exploration of those characters. I read it after watching the movie as well, but I love both uniquely, and the movie is amazing because of its performances and its music, and it's also like funnier than the book. But I do love the book's the book's narrative, and they even take time to like teach you how to make vegan casserole, and they they have the chords for one of the songs in the movie in the comic book.
The comics.
Like it's pretty awesome. So Scott Pilgrim versus the World, number 1.
Yeah, I'm gonna cheat a bit and go before Renato, because my number 1 is also Scott Pilgrim versus the World.
Yes, of course.
But Jared is a more diehard fan than I. So I really don't have much to add. But just know that ditto.
Honestly, that movie is also super quotable. I fucking love the on April 4th, 7:30 p.m. You partook of chicken parmesan. Chicken isn't vegan.
I'm an ovo-lacto. I'm an ovo-lacto vegetarian.
Ovo what?
He's like,
I don't.
gelato isn't vegan? Milk and eggs, bitch.
Milk and eggs, bitch.
Oh.
It's just so great.
I finally
love
got
it.
the soundtrack on vinyl too. It's been,
Oh, dude,
it's
I'm
been
jealous.
Spinning a
It just came
lot
out with the
here.
deluxe edition, right? Where it comes with the score too.
I know, and I'm pissed that I didn't wait.
Damn. I'm gonna have to snag me one of those now, to be honest.
Yeah, same.
Okay, so my number one is also Scott Pilgrim. I'm just kidding. Jared honestly kind of spoiled it, but
Oops.
it's Lord of the Rings. I think it's a lot of people don't know because a lot of the people just have seen the movie, but the books differentiate vastly from the movie because a lot of the stuff that was in the book obviously really couldn't be done, which is honestly I'm quite curious as to how the series is going to do it because they're actually going to be able to hopefully have some time to do it. The one that kind of sticks in like my craw like a lot, and it's honestly probably like a very petty reason to be kind of a petty change that kind of bugged me, obviously due to like the pace of the film. But in Lord of the Rings, Gandalf gives Frodo the ring, right, that Bilbo's leaving him behind, and he's like, oh, like he ponders about because Bilbo says he calls it my precious, so Gandalf immediately is like, oh shit, where have I heard that before? And so he's like, Frodo, keep it safe, keep it hidden, I'm gonna be right back. And like he goes and studies, right? He's like studying, he's like researching and shit. But like in the movie, it's like 10 minutes and it's like, oh, he was just gone for a couple days and he came back. In the book, he's literally gone for like 9 years. He's like, oh, I finally came back, Frodo. I'm sorry, you're 40 now. Sorry, here. Like it's the ring. It's the one ring to it's the ring of power. And obviously there's a bunch of stuff that had to be changed, but even still, I think the book, I highly recommend people read the book before the movie. And vice versa too. I mean, I'm not gonna judge because I've done it already. I'm a bit of a hypocrite if I were to say that. But J.R.R. Tolkien has such a for the time where he was in, like he made such a vivid like landscape and vivid history of things that truly don't exist, but somehow he's made it into something that we could understand and live in. And on paper, he has such a way of writing things, you know. He doesn't say 111. He says, like I believe he says 100 and I forgot how he says it. Damn, I ruined it. But what I'm trying to say is like he adds his own quirks to it, and for a man who went through like a lot of trauma and a lot of hardship, especially since he was he's a part of World War One, and he also funny enough, Christopher Lee. He's the only man who was on set who actually met Tolkien. So it was kind of cool to have him play Saruman and give a little bit of his insight on the man. But I think Lord of the Rings as a trilogy, I know that they're 3 separate movies, but I count them as one gigantic 11-hour journey.
Yeah.
Kind of encapsulates like the beauty of like what cinema could be.
Yeah.
Bringing something that is considered to be so unattainable and so unmanageable to put on screen, and for Peter Jackson to do it so perfectly, so wrapped in love and care, and make such a wonderful like adventure that could be seen through like forever. You know what I'm saying? And I think both the books and the movies, even the Hobbit book, even the Silmarillion and so forth, they're all great pieces of literature. And the movie, I think, is a movie that all people should see, not just filmmakers. Everyone should see it.
Yes. I agree.
Well, and so, side note, Villeneuve, we'll see what you got.
Yeah, I know, right? It's his turn. It's his
Speaking
turn.
of unattainable.
His turn. It's his turn,
I
dude.
can't wait for Dune, man. It's gonna be so cool.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Yo.
Alrighty, folks. So that was our top 3 book adaptations. Let's move on to talking about probably the only movie that we'll ever talk about on this podcast that has a 9.6 in my book. Con Air. The movie was directed by Simon West, who did Lara Croft Tomb Raider and Expendables 2. Hate Expendables 2. I'm sorry, Simon West, but I absolutely love your work on Con Air. I think this is one of my favorite Jerry Bruckheimer productions as well. Just a couple production notes. They used 14 real aircrafts in the movie, and they actually blew up the Sands Casino at the end. It was due for demolition right about the same time that they were looking for a location in Vegas. So they actually got permission to blow up the front of the casino, and that's what you see at the end. It came in 1997 at the end of. So Nicolas Cage put out 3 of the greatest action films of all time in just 13 months. The first was The Rock in 96, and then Face Off earlier that year, and Con Air. I don't think Nick Cage is the best action star in history, but I think that's the best 13-month run in action movie history. I think it's the one genre where I could call myself a connoisseur, and I say that with authority. The plot follows a man who is at the end of his prison sentence, and he gets put on a plane with a bunch of the worst criminals, and the criminals end up escaping and hijacking the plane, so he has to decide whether or not to put his head down and just get through it so that he can get to parole and meet his daughter for the first time, or should he stop these men. And this is a brilliant cast. Like I said, Nicolas Cage is kind of takes a very different turn as Cameron Poe. He's not his usual crazy self, or his kind of weird and wacky, drugged out whatever he does. He's actually the stoic of the movie, and it's really interesting. The villain is played by John Malkovich, who is called Cyrus the Virus. He is John Cusack plays the air marshal who's in charge of the plane, and Larkin. Ving Rhames plays a black militant named Diamond Dog. Cole Meany plays a douchebag DEA agent who, right away, you know everything you need to know about it when he parks his 67 Corvette Roadster in a handicap space.
What an intro.
Yeah, Dave Chappelle plays Pinball. All of his lines were improvised, according to his DVD commentary on Chappelle's Show. Danny Trejo plays a serial rapist named Johnny 23. And Steve...
It'd be Johnny 600 if they knew about all.
And Steve Buscemi plays the Marietta Mangler.
Garland Green.
Garland Green. I love Garland Green. Yeah, I love pretty much everything about this movie that factors into the 9.6 rating that I gave it. A couple things I don't like. It takes 22 minutes to set up the plot, and there's some dated lines in the movie pertaining to race, and some jokes that may not that would definitely not get written today, even though these I accept it and I don't count it against the movie, because they preface the thing by saying these are the worst people that you can possibly imagine, so it's natural that they would say terrible things to each other.
Right.
And the other thing is Nicolas Cage's accent in the movie. He has
Alabama.
An Alabama accent that doesn't...
if you can call it that.
Yeah, it doesn't really work. I don't think it's necessarily his fault. It sounds like because between the other 2 movies that he did, that he didn't have enough time to prep. He didn't have a voice acting coach. So it didn't... So it's literally the only thing that bugs me, personally. I love the grand and sweeping camera movements. There's brilliant 90s backlighting and fill lighting, especially in the end when he reunites with his family, and you can see the the fantastic bokeh. There's great slow-mo. There's great music. It's like kind of orchestral, kind of grunge. It's weird. Like I don't know how to.
True.
I don't even.
Anytime there's a chase scene, there's a wailing guitar solo.
Dude,
for like
exactly.
5
That's
minutes.
exactly what I was gonna be saying. Like, it's just I love how he'll just be running away from like an explosion, and like in the background you just hear.
Yep. This movie is everything that I love about being an American. Roger Ebert.
It's got everything. Racism.
Roger Ebert gave it 3 stars. He says it moves smoothly with visual style and verbal wit. So
Yeah.
I'm not alone in my opinion. I think this is kind of a modern classic in the action movie genre. We could talk about themes later, but I do think that the movie has actually some stuff to say. That all gets buried under all the explosion and gunfire, but
Right.
I do think that there's more to the movie than that. But let me get your guys' thoughts on it. What do you think?
I'll go first. I actually, out of the 3, surprisingly, as much as I gushed over the Mummy, this is I wanted to save it until now, but I also have never seen this movie until yesterday. So I've heard about it. I've seen the famous line, the "put the bunny back in the box." Like I've seen all that, and like it was still just as good. But I think this one had to be my favorite of the 3
Yeah.
that we watched because it's just so. It's so fucking 90s, and it's so great. It's so unapologetic in everything that it does. Like
Yeah.
it's just nope. We're going 100% into it. Simon West is not holding back. Go ahead, do everything how you want it to be. I will agree with you about the accent because he's from Alabama, and for some weird reason he's stuck between like Louisiana and like Texas. So he's trying to be like a French like Texan dude, but
Yeah.
it kind of feels weird. I actually really love the fact that Nick Cage is actually really fucking buff in this
Yeah.
movie. He looks so like
Yeah, he's jacked.
he's huge. Like I didn't realize how much of like a brooding guy he could be if he got muscular, but he pulls it off. I also love the basically like I guess your ragtag group of cons. I love how they all interact with one another. I love how mean and kind of slimy they all are. Something that I kind of wanted to like get off my chest, I guess, is like, okay, when Garland Green comes in, right? Like,
Yeah.
he's this like. First of all, I love him, but I also couldn't take it seriously because all I saw was Steve Buscemi. Like, he killed 30 people.
Even when like he starts talking on the plane, there's a point where Nick Cage and I forget who else, they look over and you think for a second you're like, is that Steve Buscemi? Like the look they give, it's just like you would expect that to
Right.
come out of their goddamn mouth.
Right. Speaking of which, though, like he does give one of the like funniest quotes, though. He's as the inmates or the cons are like dancing to "Sweet Home Alabama." He's like, "Defying irony, bunch of idiots dancing on a plane to a song made famous by a band that died in a plane crash." Like, and then Nick Cage is just like, "Hey, it's my daughter's birthday. Can you just like not do that?" I love the action sequences.
Yeah.
The explosions, as over the top they are, they're still very like fun and always. This movie never gets boring. I think this is probably like one of the few films like it never gets boring, at least to me. The setup does kind of take a while, but I forgive it the moment Malkovich is on screen too. I love that he's Cyrus the Virus, and he's just basically this super mega manipulative sociopath. He's I guess you can call him like the Joker of the movie because he's manipulating everyone.
Yeah.
It is kind of funny that that Poe and him kind of really don't interact like a lot. They're in this like really really small space,
Yeah.
and almost like rarely do you ever see them like, oh yeah, this like they're rarely talking to one another until obviously like near the end. But Cyrus the Virus also gets off another wonderful insult that I'm pretty sure at this point is famous when he meets John 23. He says, "I despise rapists. For me, you're somewhere between a cockroach and that white stuff that accumulates at the corner of your mouth when you're really thirsty. But in your case, I'll make an exception." And I think this is such a cool movie. This is such a cool movie. And it kind of makes me sad that John Cusack kind of hates the fact that he was in this movie. I was reading like the IMDb trivia that that John Cusack hates being asked about this movie, and that kind of makes me sad because I think he actually does a really good job in this movie. I think he's actually an underrated part of the movie. But that being said, I think my rating's a 9.2. I think this one was a fun as fuck movie that I enjoyed all the way through.
Yep.
Yeah, this was one hell of a ride. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Even you guys both mentioned the exposition and the setup taking a tad too long, and I agree. But I think my first note I wrote down was 1 minute 15 seconds in, and the music's already delightfully tacky.
Yes.
And so it kind of sets up just like what to expect, even though it's just shitty montages, but shitty in the best way, of just like him and his daughter, who definitely can't write at the time of the first letter, at least. Them just like talking back and forth, and it's so like close to being poorly written that it's just a lot of fun. And I feel like it kind of sets up the mindset that you have to be to enjoy the movie. So I didn't really hate it. I think it would have been a bit jarring if they immediately went full throttle into what this movie is.
True.
So I kind of forgive it for that. I can't tell how I feel about this movie. Like for my rating, I'll just do that. I was like either -8 or like a 9, but I can't tell if I like it ironically or because it's genuinely a good movie. All I know is I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is my third viewing, so there's no doubt in my mind, and it's only gotten better as time has gone by. Yeah, I definitely I'm glad you guys like it, like, because it's one of those movies that like I show to people and they're like, "Oh, really? Like you're gonna show us this movie?" Because they haven't seen it before.
What?
And then they watch it and they have like an absolute ball. Like my entire family, like my dad didn't like it, but my mom and my brother really liked it. But all of us laughed when they started playing Leonard Skinner on the plane.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Yeah.
No, you know which part made me super laugh, and maybe I'm kind of like insensitive, but I super love when they kind of like Nicolas Cage and his wife meet up again, like after his ranger training or whatever, and it. In the background, it's just blasting "How Do I Live" by Trisha Yearwood, and it's just this overwhelming like swell of like "How do I live without you?" And it's just so cool. It's so cheesy for me, but I love it just the same. And I love how Do I Live" got nominated for an Oscar and a Razzie at the same time.
Academy Award nominated Con Air. Let that get into your brain for a second. The only reason why I didn't win was because of Titanic.
Oscar nominated or Oscar winning movie Suicide Squad. It's like Oscar winning movie Suicide Squad.
Since you guys both said some of your favorite lines, I wanted to throw one out there too. When Cyrus the Virus kills, I can't remember who. But he's like, "No, please, Sai," and he goes, "Anara."
He's talking about the I forgot his name, but the guy who like pays him. I forgot his name, but
like Jesus Christ, the fact that was written on a piece of paper and that somebody told John Malkovich to say it brings me a lot of joy.
But like another a line that I like is from Ving Rhames when Nicolas Cage is like, "Why are you taking orders from a white man? Aren't you supposed to be like this militant dude?" And he's like, he just looks at him, he smiles, and this is how good Ving Rhames is. Like he sells this line. He's like, "Means to an end, my white friend." And that's all part of my favorite sequence in the film. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. I think there's a delay. There's a delay for me. That's why.
Oh, totally. Yeah. Jared's has been like, it'll delay for a bit, and then all of a sudden it'll talk at like 4 times speed for like 2 minutes, and I'm like, oh Jesus.
Yeah. So sorry. I'll have to compensate for like the delay thing. But sorry.
Okay.
I do love. It's kind of like the Mummy. I just love how so much of it is so like quotable.
Yeah.
It's such a. I think this is like the quintessential like oily man kind of like. If this was placed in the 80s, it'd probably fit just as well. But it's obviously has like that 90s flair, that 90s way of shooting an action film. But I loved it. I loved every bit of it. I love every second of it. I think the fact that Nicolas Cage is donning like long hair too is such a. It's for me it represented almost like a bit of savagery. Like he was like, okay, he's a very moral, like he has his moral set for himself, but like he still has like this very standoffish like look about him. And I also love how unapologetically like I leave no man behind, like how he is. He's like, I gotta get you your insulin and all that stuff. Yeah. And I also love how the guy who plays the guy who needs insulin, I forgot his name, but is he Bubba from Forrest Gump? Yeah, like I recognized him immediately, and I think he was a cool little character too. It kind of sucks that he was just kind of stuck sweating about his insulin, except near the end. But yeah.
Yeah. I love every minute of this, but I think my favorite sequence, I don't know if I have a favorite scene, but my favorite sequence is the Lerner Airfield sequence. Mm-hmm. Watching hundreds of action movies, thousands of action movie sequences, like this is in my top 20. It's over 20 minutes long. There are 2 plane crashes, 12 to 13 explosions, depending on how you define explosion. And it ends, there's a gunfight in it too. And it ends with a Corvette being dragged into the air by a plane and then dropped onto, like, right in front of the guy who owns.
On any other day, this would be weird.
Yeah. Yeah. That's my favorite scene in the thing. Do you guys have one that sticks out to you, or 2?
My favorite is probably the one where the landing gear scene, where he like writes the message to the air marshal on the body and drops it. Just because the way they do the body dropping is fantastic. Because usually it would be like a 2-second thing of a couple in a car and then body falls, and like that's it. You would just get that shock. Yeah. But the fact that he's pissed off about bird shit on his car, and like what's coming the second they cut to the couple, but they tease you for so long. They even cut to the body falling, which you would never really see in that scene. And then just the car crash goes on way too long as well. Like 6 different people crash into cars, and it's just delightful. The music is perfect. God.
I have to agree with Jared. That was also my favorite scene. We're gonna share the same one, but I think the cherry on top for me is like when the Fresno police officer like calls up Larkin and he's like, "Hey, I got a message for you," and he's like, "Fresno? Okay, what is it?" And he goes, "Well, it has your name written all over it." It's just, oh my goodness, it's just one of those like, oh, it's so funny. I also do love that, like, even Chappelle, when he's dead, he still made me laugh. Like, he's just like hanging there. He's just, and just ingenious, maybe not practical, but ingenious like that. He's like, you know what, I'm just gonna write on this dead body across from like a mass murderer who's also super suspicious about me. And I just love how like the scenarios are just so absurd to the point where like it could be considered like almost surrealist, like absurdist comedy, like in my opinion. But it's so over the top. I just love how over the top it is. The same thing with like the Sindino guy. He's like, oh, Sai, like how you mentioned Sai, and he's Anara. It just works. It works. Any other circumstance, it wouldn't have worked. But it worked. It worked all the way.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think the only issue that I really had with it, I didn't love Steve Buscemi's character.
Yeah.
I don't know. I wasn't
It's
a huge
pretty
fan.
weird.
I think he kind of just shows up, and was never like even mentioned before. They're like, oh, he's going like this will be fun, and then there's no like huge payoff. Like they make you think he killed a kid, but you kind of know that like you're gonna see that kid walking on a street as a reveal he didn't kill the kid. Like there's no really was never any question that he didn't kill the little girl. And he's kind of just moody the whole time.
Yeah.
It's just like, oh, there's no medicine for what I got, and I'm just kind of like, you're tacky, but you're not kind of like the fun tacky. And Steve Buscemi, I want you to just fucking go off the wall. But I don't know. He was kind of the only character I didn't really.
You know.
care
I
for.
think the reason why, at least for me, why he was kind of underwhelming in a sense is like they actually gave him a pretty badass like intro. Like he's like, oh, late edition.
Yeah.
It's Garland Green. And it's like, oh shit. And then all of a sudden like the guys had to bring in some like special hefty ass key and like, and they bring him out.
It was like some
Hannibal
Lecter
Lecter shit. And then all he does is just sit there and kind of commentate on what's going. And then, but he's one of the few like characters that actually has like that, I guess, development when he goes to see that girl or whatever, which was really weird. That part actually kind of was like a bit weird to me. Not to say it was bad, but if it was like in the middle of like the action scene, and it almost felt like it was put there because it's like, okay, we need to take a break from the action. We need to take a break from the action.
Yeah.
And then at the end of the movie, he's just playing. Playing.
I love how weird it is though. Like it's like
True.
It's like putting ranch on pizza. Like you gotta like you don't expect it. You don't you wouldn't normally think they would go together, but as soon as you put it on there, like it tastes really good. Like cutting back and forth between the guns and the he's got the whole world in his
hands.
Like it doesn't make any
I
sense.
can't wait for all of us singing that to be out of sync.
Yeah. It doesn't make any sense, but it's still,
Yeah.
I don't know, it tickles my fancy. I like it. I don't know.
For sure.
I do think you're right that
Yeah.
it doesn't really.
And like I didn't.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, just it's okay. The delay is kind of fucking with me. I was just gonna say I didn't dislike him. I just thought that he was like the weakest out of the group, and that's kind of where I stood on him.
Yeah. I agree. Like especially when you have like three great stories, like Cyrus's story, Larkin's story, and Poe's story, and like they kind of like interact with those three different narratives interact with each other. Like it's kind of weird to throw him in as like a wrench in there, but I don't know. It's weird. We can agree on that.
Yeah. Although Renato did say something I 100% agree with, and that he's really the only character that has any development, besides maybe Poe and Larkin and the whole "I now trust three men." Which does he ever say the second man that he trusts? Does he ever even say it?
No, I don't think so. I mean, not that I remember.
Because he says I only trust two men, and you're not one of them. But I don't know if he ever mentions.
I mean,
I assume like
there's like
or
a lot of
something.
like God messaging in it too, because like he even like when he's trying to save his friend, like he's like, oh, I don't see any God. I'm starting to think there ain't no God, and then he just pulls out like the fucking most macho thing ever. I'm gonna prove to you that there is a God, and he's just like, hold on. Another part that well, not always, but it made me laugh when I saw it, was that he just gets off of a plane of like cons, and like he's surrounded by police, and him and Larkin, like he's a parolee. I love how him and Larkin just jump on a police like motorcycle, and they're just like, "Fuck it, we're going after them."
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Like, for some reason, all these people who have barely interacted with him just know, like, yeah, he's not gonna like run away. He's on parole. We get it. He's not. That's not an escape.
Oh man, and I love it. I love that it actually went to Las Vegas, because I was not expecting that at all. I was like, oh, they're just gonna land in some airport or something. Like, nope, we're landing straight in the middle of Las Vegas.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Even though, like, less than half a mile, there's an open desert with 0 people where they easily could have just kind of turned,
cool.
but I'm glad they didn't. Yeah. Like, Vegas is around nothing. It's Vegas, there's a bit of suburbs,
Nothing.
and then it's blank.
Yeah, man. Couple things about the movie that I like. Like, I think like I said, I think there is another layer to it. The question gets explored, like what makes a good and evil man, like what specifically. There's a lot of themes of honor, and then freedom and punishment. There's this kind of grand irony that, like, you know, the prisoner that escaped, and that the prisoner that is, you know, giving them a middle finger to the system, Cyrus, like, Larkin says that he's a product of the system. Like, he was raised in a prison, and that's why he's motivated to do all these things, and that's why he's so, like, he's so far gone from what we understand humans and what we understand people should act like, and it's because of the amount of time that he spent in prison and in solitary confinement, and I think that is actually like kind of relevant today, especially like because there's so much criticism happening of the modern justice system. That's kind of fashionable. I wonder if those what Ava DuVernay thinks of this movie. Like, I wonder if she's watched it and what she thinks about it. And I also like when he's arguing with the DEA agent. Larkin talks about like who are you to decide the value of a man's life, and you know, and you think about it, like Cage could have easily gotten his freedom, or Poe at least, that's his name in the movie. He could have easily just gotten his freedom and gotten to his daughter in the first, like, you know, 30 minutes of the movie, but he chooses to stay on board because he understands the value of Sally's life, the guard, and of his, oh my god, what's his friend's name?
I don't. You keep on talking. I'll look it up right now.
And he understands the value of these two people's lives, and he knows that if he leaves, they'll die or get assaulted, and the question also gets answered when they're about to shoot the plane down, and Meany is, or Cole Meany's character, is like, I'm gonna shoot it down right now. We got to do it now before they hit civilian population. And Larkin's like, no, saving this one man's life is worth it, because he's done so much to try and stop these people. You know, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how much property damage happens. It doesn't matter, like, how badly we wreck Vegas. Like, we need to save Poe's life.
Right.
And he even quotes Dostoevsky in the thing. He's like, the degree of civilization in a society can be judged by observing its prisoners. Yep. And I think the movie ultimately has a hopeful message, because the prisoner that, you know, Poe was wrongfully imprisoned, he was wrongfully treated by the system, and yet he's still a good man, and he still makes the right decisions.
True.
Yeah.
Also, his best friend's name is Baby-O, or Odell.
Okay, yeah.
Odell.
That's right.
Yeah. So yeah, I actually agree with what you were saying. I think the more I listen to you, because like to be fair, I watch this solely as like a popcorn flick. Like same.
Yeah.
The majority of these movies, I think I learn a little bit more from like what Jared has been saying, because like it's just kind of like I was just sitting there absorbing it. I was just like, this is so great, explosions and quips and laughs, but you're very right. It is a movie that is so out of the blue, kind of like a pro-human kind of movie where it's like you just because you're like an inmate or a con or something doesn't necessarily make you a scoundrel to society.
Yeah.
And not to mention that the people that we label as animals or scoundrels of the society is like they're products of the very same system that we kind of punish them with, and it's so ironic, and I think that's the funny part about it, and I think that's why the Corvette was so satisfying, that like the whole explosion and being dragged through the air, and then like it landing, and then like so eloquently the ass kicker license plate is just right there in his face, and it's like almost poetic justice. Speaking of which, that DEA agent, like I don't know if you guys played the game LA Noire, but he's in it, and I was just like, oh my gosh, dude, that's the guy with like that's a like your side character, like your sidekick, the character who has like a tiny ass face on a gigantic ass like head, and like all of his everything scrunched up in the middle. But yeah, I think he plays the quintessential dickhead like, in that movie. He's just there to be like the everyone deserves to die. If you freaking steal, you're a piece of shit, and I'm gonna blow you up, and it's so perfect to see him kind of get in a way his comeuppance, even if it was just this car. But yeah, I agree with what you said, dude.
Yeah, and I do like how offhandedly kind of the DEA agent on the plane gets killed. Like he gets in a hostage situation and he thinks he has any power whatsoever, but like no. The Cyrus doesn't care about his hostage, and he has a much more valuable one of his own. And then just immediately he just gets shot and then forgotten about. And I kind of like how easily disposed he is.
Yeah, true. And speaking of which, you just remind me of that really funny ass like sequence of events where like Pinball puts in like the I guess like tracking devices in the airplane, and he puts it into that like sightseeing airplane. And at first I was like, whoa, did he just plant a bomb and like a bunch of people are gonna die? It's like no, it's just a tracking device that forces the DEA agent and everyone who are so fucking stubborn to go and chase down this group of elderly people just trying to enjoy the desert. And it was just so funny, and he just yells, God damn it, I'm gonna have to go to Learner Station. And it's such a funny moment. That part was funny as fuck for me too.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts you guys have about it? I could go on for another hour about this movie because I love it that much. But
I think there was one conversation that made me laugh, but I didn't really. I feel like it was a reference to something that I didn't understand. When Larkin and Cyrus are on the phone. He's like, where are you gonna land? Where are you going with my plane? He's like, we're going to Disneyland. Like, you're lying, Cyrus. But it ends with Cyrus going, oh, nothing makes me sadder than the agent lost his bladder on the airplane.
That's such a funny ass part.
I was like, I feel like this is a reference I'm not getting, but I laughed my ass off at it.
He does a good job. John Malkovich, like, he also had like a problem on set because like the script was being written as they were shooting, so like he was pissed off that he never really knew where his character was going.
Oh, wow.
And honestly, that kind of worked because he is unhinged the entire time, and it's he's really, and not to mention he has such a funny fucking like Street Fighter name, Cyrus the Virus. It's so great.
Yeah, I feel like he even brings attention to them rate the script when he's like, oh, I never planned that far ahead.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
how you gonna fly the plane? So it's kind of like ingrained in his character to just do whatever feels best for him and him only in the moment.
True.
Yeah. All right, guys. Well, that was our triple feature.
Yeah.
We're at 2:14.
We are indeed.
That's awesome.
I predicted 2.5 hours, so I feel like we did that. Oh, actually, hold on.
Yes.
One question, Jared. You asked us earlier how we thought the three films fit together, and I said Con Air was a bit of an outlier. Do you have any commentary on why it fits with The Mummy and Rising?
I don't. It really, it's really, really very different. I knew that I just saw that it was available on Hulu, so I couldn't resist. I just needed to watch it. And like we're like, I want to be clear to the audience. Like we don't have anything personal against these directors. We don't. We don't. We're not trying to be mean here. We're just looking at like how great these movies are and how great their work on these movies are or is, and how they went on to produce some movies that we don't like. But you know, it the fact that they've made like at least one great movie in their career means that you know, it means a lot. And these movies have all you know, shaped me and challenged me and are just great experiences to watch and to have. So I you know, yeah, they don't fit together. It fits like as a nice like comedic mood piece to put on top of like the colossal bummer of Event Horizon to the to the fun and sometimes scary, the Mummy, and then it's just a nice like it's just a nice palate cleanser of a movie, I think.
Palate cleanser, yeah.
Yeah.
So that's why I think these would go together well as a triple feature, even though there are no thematic similarities between the first two and the third one. But yeah, I want to thank my co-host for doing this, and thank you, Renato, as well for coming in and helping us out.
Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, man. This has been really fun, and I want to get you on more episodes in the future for sure. Because I really enjoy talking to you guys, and and if you guys don't know in the audience, like we've said it a couple times on the show, but they both of these guys have a music podcast called Listen to This, and it's really, really fun. You get to hear more of their analytic skills. You get to hear more of their great sense of humor as they talk about different albums that they love. And it's like a cool little book club for music. So I just want to give that a plug. And you guys can check that out on Spotify and Apple. Not Apple. Spotify.
Apple.
Yeah, we're Spotify, Apple,
SoundCloud.
Stitcher, SoundCloud, pretty much wherever. I think Amazon
nice.
Yeah.
too or some shit. Pretty much wherever podcasts be.
Yeah.
We is.
Well, thank you for listening. Any other closing thoughts you guys have before I close this out?
No.
I'll just say once again, thank you for having me on.
Absolutely, man.
This has been a wonderful experience. Talking about movies is another passion of mine, so movies and music, I'll do this any weekend. So thank you again for having me on, dude. It's been a blast.
Yeah, this was a damn good time, and I'm glad we could make it happen.
Good shit, man. All right. Well, thank you, audience. We love you. Have a great rest of your day.